The Black Cat Lounge is sponsored by Paranormal Oddities, the little store with the big heart, Niagara at the Western Block, one of the top-rated haunted destinations in Western New York, Dragonfly Art and Soul, metaphysical goods and classes, Mystery Control, your go-to feed for science, magic, true crime, paranormal, and much, much more. Hey everybody, Tim Shaw here. Thank you for being on the show. We're gonna go hang out. It's the best place to be. Where else would you want to be on a Wednesday night? You gonna go shopping? Is that what you want to do? Do you want to go hang out in the produce section? Is that what is important? No, I'm gonna tell you what's important. Hanging out at the Black Cat Lounge, where everybody is everybody's friend, and we all have a good time. I gotta thank everybody from, oh my God, the Mansfield event that we just did this weekend. Phenomenal. Took me 2 days to get over. My voice is still a tad hoarse because I literally spoke to hundreds and hundreds of people. I cannot believe, I have this reputation of not ever being by my table. That's something that I try to uphold. Why I'm never at my table? Come closer. I'll tell you why. Because as a psychic, I'd rather wander around than do readings. I can't help it. It's just the way I am. But I was scheduled for a gallery on Sunday, and we had about 35, 40 people in there, which really surprised me. I thought it was great because I was the anchor. A lot of people showed up. We had a fun time. People got pelted with candy, as always, and that's the way it works. I have to say that tonight our guest is someone who I've known for a while. And I met her, and I thought she was just such this sweet little thing. Not that she's not a sweet little thing, but she's a sweet thing. And as time went on, I have to say that Kaycee has evolved into a powerhouse. I could never have gone and predicted what a powerhouse this lady is. And I am so thrilled that she said that she would be on, because there's a lot of topics that a lot of, I will say, podcasters, vodcasters, that they're kind of afraid to approach. And I think because of my past hanging out and knowing many of my friends in the Six Nations, I mean, I got a chance to learn from some really great people. I was honored to know the late Warren Sky, a Pine Tree Chief. I have Mike Bestine, who is the student of the late Mad Bear Anderson. Mad Bear Anderson was a Tuscarora. He was an amazing person, a mover and shaker for the nation. And Mike carries on that tradition. And I got a chance through the paranormal. You never know who you're going to meet in the paranormal, living or dead. You never know these things. But I got a chance to meet this wonderful lady that I want to bring to you tonight. And we got some really great topics. Our guest tonight, and listen, guys, I'm not going to lie. This is her introduction, because I did not even know how to start, where to go, because she is she's a Renaissance woman. Now I'm going to just come around and say, Kaycee is a Renaissance woman. She's an author. She's a podcaster. She's a sought after speaker. She's artist in residence at the Jamestown Community College, who brings together Indigenous art and advocacy. Her digital painting, The Crying Woman, is a protest of the kidnapping of Indigenous women and girls. We can talk about that. Kaycee is considered a culture bearer and creator. She's gone and she's created this wonderful gallery, this beautiful art space in which she teaches. I'm amazed by what she does. It's called Kaycee Gallery. And she tackles issues such as the practice of blood quantum, which, man, I'm going to tell you what, I knew a little bit about it, but before the show, I did a little bit more more research into it. And the federal government was trying to limit citizenship to indigenous peoples, and it's a shame. It's disgusting when you start looking into it. Disgusting. Kaycee carries on a tradition of arts that she learned from her mom. I got to tell you what I've seen. Her mom's beadwork rivals, and so does Kaycee's beadwork, rivals the golden age of beadwork of the Seneca Nation. I've seen so many, excuse me, so many examples of it in the Buffalo Erie County Historical Society and collections. She is constantly striving to educate people on the true heritage of her ancestors. Lastly, Kaycee is an outspoken advocate of something that is a little touchy. I'm just going to point out and say it's a little touchy in paranormal metaphysical circles. I myself started off appropriating things that I did not understand. And we see paranormal investigators, we see metaphysicians, we see people who don't do the research. We see historic guides on locations repeating old stories that are not true. The history that is not researched. So, everybody, I want you to meet one of the nicest people that I know, one of the most knowledgeable people I know, and it's an honor, an absolute honor to have Kaycee Colburn on the show tonight. Kaycee, how you doing there, kiddo?
Hi, how are you doing? I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled that you came. And you know what, Kaycee? It was so great to see you this weekend. You made my weekend. It was so great. I didn't expect you were going to be at Mansfield. I turned around and I see this familiar face. I went, oh, that's fantastic. I love that you stopped by. Now, okay, where do we want to start? We talked off air that I'm going to let you kind of like you can guide me. What is one of the things that you really that we want to bring up? And it can be paranormal, it can be whatever you want.
So, well, let's talk about some of the projects that I've got going on.
You
Give a little
got it,
bit of
kiddo.
we'll give a little bit of a backstory to who I am too.
That's
So,
fantastic.
I am Kaycee Colburn, and I have apprenticed under Brian J. Cano from Haunted Collector and Paranormal Con and Camera. I predominantly have been found at the Haunted Hinsdale House, and there I did the gardens, giving back to the land. I'm the only one that has permission to actually do like medicine work or metaphysical work on the property, and that was given to me by Dan Class. And now I've got paranormal tours started at the Fenton History Center, where I'm the only one that's allowed to run them. I'm on the board of the Fenton History Center. I'm on the board of the Roger Tory Peterson Institution here in Jamestown, New York, and several other. I collect boards, so several other boards, quite differently than the boards that you're used to collecting, Tim. And yeah, I've got a ton of projects that I've been working on. I was one of the lucky individuals that got the Creatives Rebuild New York grant for marginalized or unrepresented artists. And through that program, I was able to open my own little gallery shop here in Jamestown, New York, which is called Kaycee. And I don't know if you want me to go into the name of that, but it was a little bit creative how I came up with the name of Kaycee.
No, absolutely. Because you know what, Case, I want everybody to know who you are. Again, I mean, I'm not lying to anybody, and everybody who knows me know that I can be very blunt, and I won't go and really soothe anybody's ego. You're someone, and I truly meant that when I said that you're a Renaissance woman. So go into it, because I want people to get a good sense of who you are right off the bat.
Okay. Well, so the name Keiko actually, I mean, it's Kayco, which is the first three letters of my first name and the second two of my last name. But it is also the name of a very famous orca whale. I don't know if everybody here has heard of Free Willy, but his real name is Keiko. And when I was a very little girl, I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 years old, they asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was obsessed with that movie, just absolutely obsessed. I really connected to the orca whale energy. I loved it. And so I said, I want to be an orca whale. I want to be Willie. And after I had the Six Nations flag raising, which was a historical event here in Jamestown, New York, my younger sister, my little sister, she said, well, and it was kind of sarcastic. She was like, well, how are you going to be a whale now? Right. I've had so many accomplishments that she was like kind of taking a little bit of fun. Right. And it just clicked in my brain. Oh my God, I've always been Keiko. And I know exactly what that means now, and that means facilitating a space that will fill a very large, very real gap here in Chautauqua County, which is, the lack of representation for the Indigenous population that's here.
Now, a lot of people don't realize that you actually walk in two worlds. How difficult is it to actually try to maintain relationships on both sides? Because I know some people up at the Tuscarora Reservation. That's primarily whom I've been associated with over the years. It's tough, and I've seen that. How is it? How do you do it?
I mean, it definitely is very tough. I mean, I actually have a piece here that I think I've got a couple pieces here that I think kind of helps talk about that, kind of gets that kind of going. So the one piece is entitled Half Breed, right? Because that was something that's actually a slur. It was meant to harm us. I've decided to
Right.
use it as armor because I am half white, right, on my dad's side. My family is not enrolled. I am lighter skinned. I'm actually lighter skinned than my younger sister and my older siblings. So I kind of joke that like my mom like ran out of ink and then she like reloaded. Um, they don't like it when I joke like that, but here we are. Um, and so, but with that comes a lot of lateral racism. Okay. Lateral racism, in my case, is native to native racism, right? Somehow I'm less than somebody who is full-blooded, which is a loaded topic right there. That's blood
Right.
quantum. Um,
Right.
or somebody that's grown up on the reservation. Um, and there's a lot of reasons why Native Americans don't grow up on reservations or on territory. And that's because of displacements. The removal happened in the 60s. It wasn't that
Hmm.
long ago. My mom was like 8 to 10 years old at that time. So it really wasn't all that long ago. And
And you're talking
that
about the removal of the Allegheny through the Kazua Dam project. Correct.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and that happened, I believe it was 65 that
Hmm.
concluded. It was under works for some years before that, but it concluded, I believe, 65, replacing 300 to 400 families, some of which that didn't have, like, we weren't very colonized at that time, okay? So we didn't have a need for like jobs and things that you think of today. And that doesn't mean that we were uncivilized. That just means we had a different type of economy, a different type of community. What people don't know with that kind of thing is that we actually had cities here in the United States that rivaled the size of Paris. We had trade routes that were beautiful. That's why we have corn up here. That's why we have, that's why people here know about dream catchers and things, is because we traded with other, tribal peoples, other indigenous peoples. And we're not all the same.
A lot of people don't realize that the importance, and here in Western New York, the importance of Native American occupation here of these lands was probably far more important than anything else during the the post European colonization period, because Native Americans had trade routes, and what people don't realize now, if you guys look at Buffalo, New York, when we start looking at goods that have been found in burial sites, the mounds, you start seeing black chert, which is flint, from the Hudson River Valley. You found shark teeth from Florida. You find red pipestone from Minnesota. I mean, you start seeing that. This is how extensive these routes were, and the European conquest just followed them right through, and that became roads, and that became the Western expansion routes. And people don't get that. And
Yeah.
along the way, they felt that Native Americans were somehow not as civilized as the Europeans were at the time. And yet, you look at oh God, I can't think of that huge city in Illinois, Chicago. I can't say it. You know which one I'm talking about. Where it rivaled anything in Mexico or Central America. People don't realize that. People don't realize that how much of the language we've picked up from our interactions with Native Americans.
Yeah.
So I mean, people just have this tendency just to just kind of sweep them away. However, you know yourself. Now you're quite a bit younger than me. Kaycee, you're quite a bit younger than me. No. But you see how so much of this has been appropriated. So much of this has been appropriated, and now it's part of this culture that people do not go and realize. They just, the automatic, I mean, you know yourself, many within the craft movement itself. And you can see how much of this is Native American that has been appropriated into the witchcraft movements here in the United States, or the New Age movements here in the United States. What's your opinion of that? I got to ask you, as someone who has pride in their ancestry, when you see somebody doing that, and you see somebody dance, doing sage or cedar or doing and I'll just use this word as just a general thing, a ritual that Native Americans may have done. How does that make you feel, and how does that make a lot of Native Americans feel?
Well, I won't speak for everybody, but what I see as a very common trend is, while we are happy to see people, reaching for our sacred medicine, right? That alone is an acknowledgement that, one, that it's real, and two, that it's necessary. Okay. However, medicine, I'll start from, I guess, the beginning with that.
Please.
Our shaman, that's actually not a native term. Shaman is
Right.
not.
That's Russian, basically. That's
Yes.
Russian. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is not ours. But our medicine people were the only ones that would go out and collect plants and medicinal things for medicine, right? That was because of sustainability. So a lot of people like there to be like a very deep spiritual reason, but a lot of us were actually very scientific people. So we kept it so that it was very simple, right? The medicine person plus whoever they were teaching, right, would know where to go get the plant medicines that they needed for a specific element. So that made it so that if, everybody went out and started harvesting, they wouldn't be able to go get whatever they needed for you.
Correct.
So now you
right,
come in
right.
with a broken arm and it's infected, they can't help you because it's not where they knew that it would be. So it was very much for sustainability practices. And today we don't have that. So one of the most commonly appropriated items is white sage. White sage currently is only growing in California, and it's going extinct in the wild. So that's problematic. The reason it's going extinct in the wild is because of colonization practices with commercialization. So with the hyper commercialization of white sage, it's actually making it so that the native populations that are there that depended on it for the medicinal properties and for spiritual ceremonies don't have access to that anymore. Which is making it so indigenous people there are starting to steal the plant, which is kind of like bad mojo for it. But
Right.
also it's ultimately making it so that it's losing its like spiritual medicinal properties. Um, and it's not sustainable in the wild. So I mean, it's not like being a snowflake. That's very real consequences to commercialization and ultimately from colonization.
Do you feel that sometimes, and this is something that I have a problem with, and I kind of spoke about this in a cleansing class I did up at Sault Ste. Marie a couple of years ago, that perhaps each culture should research their culture and their folkways and and I'm not going to say stick to them, because I mean, I know a lot of great shaman that really have Native American indigenous hearts. I know so many. I've been blessed, and we talked about Chuck beforehand, and but there are so many other different ways of doing things. Why do you think people gravitated automatically to especially I lived through the Aquarius age, the New Age, and all of a sudden everybody was grabbing for sage. Everybody was smoking, peace pipe. Everybody was starting to go and dress in Native American garb. Why do you think that it became popularized? What do you think there was some kind of mysticism to it, or do you think it was just somebody just kind of turned it into a fad?
I mean, I think there are a lot of truths to all of what you just said. Um, I want to believe that spiritually, they felt that it was something that was of importance. Maybe socially, they said, it's not really safe or accepted to be indigenous. I mean, we weren't even given the rights to vote until what, the 60s, 70s?
Right, you're right about that. Yes.
And so it was probably a way to protest and make it culturally, socially, culturally acceptable, right? And that's why you've got all the fringe, you've got the suede, you've got all this indigenous, you've got the feathers, dream catchers even. Um, and so it probably through an act of protest did become kind of a trend. I wasn't there at the time, so I can't confirm that, but looking through like an anthropological lens, that's kind of
Yes.
what it appears to be to me.
Now I got to
And
here's something that might be a little historical. And I want your opinion on it, because after being a docent up at Old Fort Niagara and working closely with my friends up at Tuscarora, I've noticed much of the Western traditions that have seeped into here in the East. And my theory is that Europeans went out of their way to almost obliterate so much of the culture here in the East that sometimes I believe sometimes the Western culture, because they lost so much, so much was forgotten. And you know yourself, historically, how the federal government sought to, de-Indian Native American peoples. Do you feel that they reached out to many of the Western traditions and cultures because we've lost so much, because they were destroyed by the federal government and by state governments and all the people who wished to go, and of course, greedy, grabbing as much land as they possibly can? Do you feel that's a reason for it? Because I've always wondered. I never asked any of my friends that question, and I feel comfortable actually asking you, because I really value your opinion.
so I believe it was the 1800s when the Pan-Indian movement came through.
Mhm.
And basically what that was we acknowledged that there was an extreme case of erasure right?
Right.
And so we kind of all pulled together, and that's why we have like the medicine wheel and things here, where it's not a traditional Seneca thing or Haudenosaunee thing, but it is here. And now there's a resurgence to get back to what was original, like to the Seneca people. So now we're seeing kind of where that's kind of going away. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't here at one point, right? My mom grew up going to Longhouse. She learned about the
Mhm.
medicine wheel. So we know that it was here for a little bit at the very least. And it doesn't mean that the teachings are incorrect or anything. It's just not true to the Seneca people. But this kind of thing did happen, right? And then along with our natural trade routes, like we have certain moccasins, styles that started from a different tribe that we really like, so we have them over here. Very, very much like how our trade routes and everything is today. It really was not as uncultured, uncivilized as what our history books and media will kind of tell us.
Now, okay, let's get into some hot potatoes here. Okay, you ready for this one? Because we talked about it off air, and I know for a fact that we are. I'll make some non-friends out of this conference because I am very outspoken about it. Let's talk about the recent development. And I say recent development, a lot of this has happened in the last 15, 20 years. That Native Americans are the catalyst for so many energetic hauntings on so many different areas. Now, as a spiritualist, Kaycee, I'm going to go and put my hand up and say my religion probably helped propagate it, because back in the day, everybody, when I was growing up, when I was young, I remember so many of the old timers talking. Old timers, they were younger than me, Kaycee. That's but they would talk about their Indian guides because they felt that these Indian guides were closer to nature, so they were able to go and tune in somehow. And there's nothing worse. I don't know how many places I've been, and we've talked about Hinsdale, and we can bring this up. I mean, and we both know Dan Kless. He's a great guy, and we love him to death. And you've had the conversation with him
I have.
About all of this Native American influence. And now I don't, they they're like Native Americans cause hauntings, and to me, and I don't know how many times I've stopped at a location and people are going, "Oh, it was built on a Native American burial site." Well, let's go back 3 to 5,000 years anthropologically. What's not a burial site?
Mhm.
Look at all the mounds, during the mound builder era that were just leveled. Look at Mount Morris with that big ossuary that was leveled, and they made that they paved the street over it. I mean, here in Buffalo is the same thing.
The
I've seen it.
stadium.
The stadium, exactly. Time and time and time again, I've seen this happen. What do you? How do you address this? Because I'm outspoken and say maybe you should go and maybe open up a book and read something, and that doesn't endear me to to some of these locations. But I mean, how do you address it? Because I feel that this is something that is so important that it needs to be addressed, because paranormal investigators and all these people, they just take status quo as an answer.
Well, I would like for everybody to Google what the Indian Arts and Crafts Act in the 1990s actually holds too, which says that there's quite a big chunk of money that will actually help prevent, or at least prevent any future appropriations. And arts and crafts, so that word art, if we examine that, that's not just arts and crafts like macaroni art or beadwork or what you might consider to be a craft, but art is actually any visual or performance art. So if you're making a documentary, that is a form of visual art, right? If you're acting in it, then that's also a form of performance art. So with that being said, there is a very, very hefty fine per piece of appropriation, so per film, maybe even down to per clip. I'm not very certain on that, but I'm willing to bet it. And then also federal prison time that is also attached to that. I believe it's 5 years per piece, I believe. So we do have certain protections against these things. And it's not really about being like a snowflake or being too sensitive. It's really about the fact that when we have people making up Native American history, you go into a location, we brought up the Hinsdale House. So you go into a location and you're like, oh my God, it's all Native American demons and it needs to be handled. And, you're bringing up, you've brought in a Native American shaman now that is totally appropriating. They might be, considered a plastic shaman or a fake shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're, making up traditional history, you're making up traditional artifacts and just really starting to appropriate. That makes it very, very hard for the indigenous populations in that area to actually say what is and what isn't authentic. And that becomes very, very, very harmful because for indigenous people, we have to keep 3 to 4 of our ceremonies authentic and our language authentic. So if you're going in and you're making up words and you're saying this and you're doing, you're making it so that we can possibly go extinct. Which because the United States can then say, oh, you're not a tribe, you can't keep it authentic, so you're gone. They can
Right.
come in and disband us as a tribe. So there are very real consequences to everything that we do. And I think people today kind of forget that there's very real consequences to everything you do. Ripple effect, right? And to see it happening from spiritualists, that are supposed to be so deeply, rooted in the land and the people, and really what they're rooted in ends up being their pocket.
Right.
And
Yes.
that's one of the things that has really kind of started to turn me off from the paranormal and the metaphysical field. Is just, it's not, a lot of it is not real.
Oh, this is something that I have been disgusted with for a long time. People no longer are looking for the truth. People are no longer. I remember when I first started researching uh, the neutrals and the Erie tribes, and that predate the Iroquois Confederacy. I remember researching that and just found how beautiful it was, but yet how it differed from everything else that I was taught, everything else everybody was talking about in the paranormal world. And this is something that really disgusts me. I feel that, well, I'll throw it out there. I feel that paranormal investigators as a whole, I'll throw it out, and spiritualists as a whole, because spiritualists are the biggest appropriators that there ever was. Because if you do any kind of studying, everything is appropriated from the Greek, Roman cultures, and old Babylonian texts, and I mean everything. It's a chaos. It's a chaos religion. It's like chaos magic. And what bothers me is the fact that people use this as a thrill ride. People use this as, oh, well, a shapeshifter is going to come. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, and it's not, I what I think, Kaycee, what I'm trying to say is that people are using it as an excuse for hauntings. People are,
It's
instead
a
of
cop out.
looking. Exactly. Uh, my friend Johnny Zaffis, he's a demonologist, and he's been probably one of my greatest supporters and my mentor when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And he has always said to me, look for the battery, but look for the true battery. Don't ever go and take what anybody is telling you at face value. And I've always lived by that. And I don't know how many times, again, not to pick on these guides, because these guides, most of them are there for minimum wage or volunteering, and they are reading from a script. And this script is something. Do you remember? Let me ask you this, Case. Do you remember back when if you looked at Wikipedia and you looked under the Hinsdale House, they talked about this great Revolutionary War battle, and they found stone points all through the Hinsdale area. Well, you know what kills me is that, yeah, it was part of the Sullivan Clinton campaign of 1779, and stone points only predate them by at least 3,000 years. Apples and oranges. Yet I see this time and time and time again. Same thing with Native American burial mounds. Everything's a Native American burial mound.
Yeah. Well,
People,
with the Hinsdale too, what I've heard over and over, like paravomit, right? We've got a lot of that in the field. Is that there is a Native American chief who is, loincloth, buckskin loincloth, the big, beautiful war bonnets, very your cliche Native American chief, right? That's not what we look like around here.
not at all. But
So,
again,
so that's a
yeah,
conversation, because then why is he
yes.
here? But one of the things that, that I have kind of, okay, if everybody's picking up on this, maybe what we have an idea of is a collective consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody has this idea of what a Native American looks like. And it's something that I actually fight every single day, because the local community here, because we don't look like what, John Wayne portrayed us as, they say, oh, you're extinct. So I am dealing with a lot with that. But with everybody kind of coming up with this idea of what this Native American spirit could possibly look like, it quite possibly, if in fact they are saying it, they are actually seeing this, they're hearing them or whatever, maybe it's a collective consciousness, very much like, some shadow men and like, Slender Man even.
Yes.
Does that mean that
Yes.
he's real, that he's like rooted in history? Absolutely not. But there are several reports of this type of entity there. But I think it's rooted by, they are on a reservation or near a reservation, so then they want to see it, right? They're scared of it because they don't understand native, medicine. They don't understand the
Exactly.
magic.
Yes.
They've seen
Yes.
all of, Dead Files and, Ghost Adventures and everywhere else that are, the Native American entities are demonic. So, the fear and the energy that they're putting in it, plus their idea of what it looks like, bam, you've got this, knick-knack greeting card version of a Native American. And that's not a good representation of who we are or what we are. And
I think a lot of what we're talking about is that, first of all, I've worked with thought forms many years. Thought forms are temporal energy, whatever, and they can be molded by the imagination. And in the case of the Philip experiment, table tipping in 1972, we know that these thought forms can develop into an intelligence or have some kind of intelligence, associated with them. What do people think? People come up to a location, they're told this stuff, right? Okay, now it's already imprinted in their brain. Native American. So what's the first thing that they think of? They think of Western Indians. They never think of headdresses like the Gustaway or anything like that. I hope I said that right. It's been a while since I've actually used that name, the traditional headdress, and they don't know it. So what happens is that intention, that knowledge, just keeps reinforcing this thought form. And the second thing that really pisses me off as a medium and as a psychic medium is the fact that we should be living in a time where people question what they're seeing in, these people are, what they're bringing in these visions. And I know back in the 70s, nobody questioned anything. That's why so many of these haunted locations have these crazy theories, these incredible theories of all this stuff, especially Native American coming in and this one, and they were killed and all. You know, you have to question it, and then you have to take that whatever you get and then apply it to logic and historical research, and they're not doing that. And to me, why even bother to do this? If you want a thrill ride, Halloween is not that far away. Find yourself a haunted house,
Hmm.
because what will happen is that you get a place that is energetically active, that may have some kind of intelligence. Don't think that it isn't going to go and perceive of what you're expecting, and it's going to spit it back at you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all I can think of now too, like with what you were saying, is there's like a parody thread, if you will, on TikTok where they're like, the Mothman stole my catalytic converter, and like,
Yes, I
it just keeps
love
going
those.
from there. And but people are like that. I mean, people are just, they're not doing the research. They're not even attempting to do the research, right?
Right.
And
And
that it
my
makes
God,
things very difficult.
we're living in an
So,
age where we can find all of this research online. Now, not to say that everything is online, because you do still have to go and page through thousands and thousands of pages, but you can get a good sense of what's on of a location, of an area. But yet nobody does that. Nobody takes the
mhm,
time to do that. Nobody looks for a
mhm,
pedigree, and that bothers me. I mean, when we start reading books, and I mean, Clara Miller's book Echoes of a Haunting, it's a seminal book on the Hinsdale case. They're looking at it through modern eyes, and they're not understanding this is 1970 knowledge. You have everything that went on when comes through 1970 knowledge, when it was like uh it was like Spook Central, when people loved that thrill ride. And this was a family that was definitely tormented by something. Yet they're looking for the scapegoat. They're looking for the easiest way. And what's the easiest way?
mhm,
Oh, there's burial mounds on the property.
mhm. And
Yeah,
a lot of the times too, like, so when people don't recognize like what a burial mound could actually be, which is a midden,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Which is just, I feel, almost as equally valuable historically, right? Because middens are where anthropologists actually find the most value, right, in their digs, right?
Yes,
Because,
exactly.
so what, if you don't know what a midden is, it's our,
Refuse pit, basically.
yeah, like it's where we, our garbage heaps. And because we didn't have dumps and things like that, we didn't have landfills. It was just, oh, you're done with it, there you go. And if it was something that you could compost, there you go. And so we took care of garbage as best as we could during that time, and a lot of it became middens. And that, I've got pieces here at Keiko that date back to 500 AD, which
Hmm.
is from a midden up in Savannah, New York, called a hunter's home.
Yes, I'm
And
familiar with.
so we can have very valuable pieces from that. So just because it sounds creepier to call it a burial mound doesn't mean that it's any less valuable. Just call it what it is, which is a midden, and it's going to be as equally cool. I assure you.
And I think a lot of problem people have is that they forget that this was an advanced culture. By the time the Europeans came here, they had established communities. They had huge cities, not even just towns. They had huge cities, and they had advanced farming techniques. They were so advanced, yet they'll go and again, they'll just they won't go and they won't take the time to understand the culture that predates, let's say, when the house was built or when a location was developed by European settlers. People don't see that. People don't take the time to do that. And I think that's probably one of the banes of these communities, because to me, it's a total disrespect. You have to go and, and again, I know I'm going to get letters on this one, but I don't really care. Here's the bottom line. You're going out there to contact the dead. Why aren't you going and pushing yourself a little bit further to understand what you might be getting? Who occupied this land? Where is and if you go to the museums, they have all sorts of maps out there that were done in the Jesuit relations. If you guys want to go out there and do the research, we'll have locations of all the different towns and the cities. Why don't you go and do that? Why? Because it's hard. It's easier to go and rent a place, drive up to it, take your recorder out, watch all the little pretty lights on the K2 meter, and then drive away after having a eating pizza, drinking beer, and taking a little thrill ride. When your REM pod goes off at 7:00 in the morning. To me, people are not getting into reason for it, and they're turning around. They're saying, and this is why paranormal investigators are not getting a great reputation, and why all these skeptics are on them constantly, because they're calling it a science, and it's not. It's more of a hobby for most of them. They're not applying scientific method, or at least any kind of method, to it. And I find it disgusting, and I find it disturbing that they won't go and understand the early history, the prehistory of the land, because the land to me is what's sacred. The land is what gives the energy, and the land to me will always have that vibration.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And it's kind of interesting to me to see, because it goes back to that cop out, right? Because they can just say that it's XYZ tribe, and you gotta burn your house down now because that's the only way to get rid of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a case in Michigan that I was involved in. That was, somebody actually told them, you should destroy your house and move 500 yards in another direction. It's what?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it was, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Dead Files that was telling everybody basically in Warren that they went to, oh, it's a Native American, it's demonic, it needs dealt with. And I'm like, oh, well, what a wonderful way to demonize an entire culture and bastardize it at that, So, we see this, but, in Europe, you don't see that. And it's not that there weren't indigenous peoples there, because there were.
Yes, of course there were. But people don't get that. People, you know what? And reality TV, Kaycee, I don't have to preach to you this, but everybody out there, as someone who has been involved in reality TV on both sides of the camera, I can tell you that demons sell commercials. The Mercedes people will go and love a show that has lots of demons in it, lots of evil. I don't care who we're going to blame. Let's go and just, smear an entire culture. But boy, I'll tell you what, you can go and you can sell all those little blue pills and all that other stuff on there, because and that's just the way it works. That's just the way it works. And what a shame that is. But if in all fairness, if they were to show what things really should be, you and I would find it fascinating. But the American public would find it boring, because it would be top heavy with research, and you would have a lot less of the blinking lights and the get out moments, and that's what the shame of it is. And I really do have a problem with that. And I run into a lot of problems. Matter of fact, I had this discussion with some people this weekend, which they weren't really happy with, but that's okay.
Yeah, I do think that the new generation coming in, because I work at the college. I've only got like a month left, but I work at the college. And my time with the students, like they're very inquisitive, very like research based, very historical based. I thought, coming forward with as much Indigenous knowledge that I have, I thought for sure I was going to get a lot of like hate mail and stuff, you know.
Hmm.
But no, they've been very, very open. So
Great.
to everybody that is starting to see like a lull in their views or likes or whatever, maybe consider, you know, doing the ethical thing. Maybe consider doing the research and the scientific thing, because that's what this new generation is after. That's what they want.
I really hope that's true, because when I first started out, a lot of it was. I mean, of course, I mean, the spiritualism was all the realm of belief. But I'm really hoping that, and then we started doing a little bit more research, as much as we knew we could do at the time. It was pre-internet, Kaycee. I know this was way before your time, but I'm really hoping that the next generation of people coming up will not be so fascinated by the gizmos and by the guys with the six-pack abs and all of that. I'm really hoping that they start becoming more of truth seekers, and
Yeah.
not the, you know, and like the different psychical societies that I've been associated with, and the different psychical societies that I've researched in the beginning, before all the age of fraud and all that started. That's what they were based on. They
Hmm.
wanted to search, they wanted to push, they wanted to question. And I think
Well,
that's what we need to do, and we need to keep encouraging that.
what I've kind of observed from them, right? And I have taken anthropology. I am a social justice worker, so I do come from like that kind of lens. Okay. What I have observed with them is that they are asking very blunt questions.
Hmm.
Um, but it's a bit different than what we're used to, right? Because they're actually wanting understanding instead of argument,
Right.
right? So a lot of the times in previous generations, what we see is asking the blunt questions because they want validation for their opinion to further their argument into whatever the topic is. Whereas this generation is actually wanting an understanding. They want to know the truth. And I think it's because they, you know, they are so technologically advanced and driven, right? I mean, I can hand on my phone, they can show me a million things that it does that I didn't even know that it could do. But they just absorb information so much quicker than, you know, I mean, that's why it's gone from, you know, movies to TV shows to Netflix and uh, YouTube to now it's TikTok, right? Where it's like the 30-second reels if you got to keep up. And it's because they're able to absorb this information so much quicker than what we were
Hmm.
originally used to. That's not to say that we can't absorb it as an older generation. It's just that's the pace that they're adequately like
Exactly. No,
that's
I
what they're
agree.
used
I agree with you 100%, Kaycee, because of the
to.
fact that I know each generation has its faults. You
Mhm.
know, generation before me, my generation after me, everyone has become. had- we what is it? The every generation reaches its own level of incompetence. That's
Mhm.
basically what it is. Next generation picks up the torch and moves on with it. That's the way it is. Kaycee, we're running out of time. Tell everybody what you're up to.
Well, I am running Keiko, which I'm hoping will become a 501c3 at some point. Right now, it is, to my knowledge, the only organization, the only representation for the Native American culture here in Chautauqua County, which is a huge, huge responsibility put on me. But I do have a good community support from it, so I'm very lucky in having that. But really, I just wanted it to provide the representation, say, hey, we are still here. And I'm hoping maybe one day it'll become a 501c3 and then I can go be an artist and do all sorts of other cool things. Some of the projects that I have coming up, I'm working on a glow in the dark exhibit, which
Wow.
is going to be a conversation about the effects of colonization on conservation, because largely when we think of colonization, we only think about the effects that it's had on people and communities, but we don't think about it as how it actually shaped the land, right? It's a totally different landscape than what it was originally because of colonization. We don't think about the effects on it on plants like sage, like we talked about earlier, and we don't talk about it in the relationship between that and animals. And there are animals here that are extinct. I mean, if we look at Kinzua, we don't know if there were any species there that were on the brink of extinction, then went extinct because they flooded the place. We don't know that. And I don't know if we would ever know that. So there are so many different things that we don't talk about too much. And I'm going to, through Blacklight, I'm going to kind of talk about it all. And I'm going to have a primary focus on macaw conversation.
I save one question for all my favorites. It's a hard question, Kaycee, but I do save it for my favorites. End of it all. What would you love to have written as an epitaph on your tombstone? What would you like it to say? It's my favorite question to ask my friends.
I think because I am so far from what I thought I originally would be. I mean, I thought I was going to be a whale, and then I thought I'd be a zoologist, and I thought I'd be a lot of different things. I mean, a rock star, you throw all of it in there.
You are a rock star. I'm just going to let you know. I think
So
you're a rock star.
I think what I would have it say is dare to be.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Kaycee, thank you for being on the show tonight. I want you to stay on so I can thank you properly after the show. But this has been illuminating, and I hope everybody out there that has been watching this gets a little bit of a taste and opens up their minds a little bit more. Not be afraid to do the research, not to be afraid to say, this is absurd, this is wrong, not to go and not to be rude to some of these well-meaning guides and propagators of lies, but to say, hey, that doesn't compute. That just and just do it, And I think that what you're doing by showing the artwork, showing how you have a heart in order to go and push different causes, to be able to spread your traditions and cultures, to be able to save your traditions and cultures. That's huge. That's huge. Thank you so much, Kaycee. Stay on the line, kiddo.
Thank you. No way.
Good night there, kiddo. I'll be right back. I promise I won't hang up on you. Hold on. Kaycee's phenomenal, isn't she? I mean, I am so impressed by her. And that's why I wanted to bring her on this show. I wanted all of us to go and sit down and really think about what we're saying. Think about what we're researching. Think about life in general, because this is not something that is in a boundary. This is something that we all need to share, especially within the different fields, especially the reasons why we do A, B, and C. Guys, this is Tim Shaw. You have been listening to What Else? The Black Cat Lounge here, live on Facebook and everything else, YouTube and my website, and whoever knows where else this is going. But guys, we'll see you next week, Wednesday. It's where the elite meet, next to the dumpster transfer station, guys. Ciao. Love you all. Thank you again for being on tonight. Bye-bye.